What if a man who was already dead walked through a town as if alive? Who or what really killed Charles May? And can anyone explain the horrifying sight at Nolan? Join Classic Storytime Hub as we dive into The Thing at Nolan by Ambrose Bierce, reimagined in this thrilling retelling. Before we dive in, subscribe for your daily stories. Now, let's go. South of the winding road that connects Leesville and Hardy, where the East Fork of May Creek cuts through the land, a crumbling, abandoned house leans against time itself. No soul has called it home since the summer of 1879, and the walls sag under the weight of years, whispering secrets to anyone daring enough to listen. For a few restless years before it was deserted, the house belonged to the May family, a lineage tied so tightly to the creek nearby that it bore their name. Charles May, the patriarch, lived there with his wife, two young daughters, and a son named John. The girls' names have been lost to memory, slipping away like the mist over the creek at dawn. John May was a quiet storm, a man of few words but a heart heavy with stubborn, smoldering hatred. He rarely erupted in anger, but when he did, it lingered like smoke in a sealed room, unforgiving and implacable. His father, by contrast, was all sunlight and sudden sparks. Cheerful, warm, and quick to laugh, Charles could ignite in anger like a dry leaf catching fire, only to have it burn out in an instant. He held no grudges. Once the flare passed, he would extend a hand of reconciliation, as if anger had been nothing more than a fleeting shadow. The neighborhood joked that John had inherited his brooding temperament from his uncle, a man as unyielding and dark as the creek on a stormy night, while Charles seemed almost alien in his warmth, a bright island in a family of shadows. Tension had been brewing for days, and one afternoon it finally erupted. Words flew between father and son like sparks in a dry forest, sharp and unforgiving. Then, in a flash of anger, Charles May struck John squarely across the face. John didn't flinch. He calmly wiped the blood from his lips, fixed his cold, unyielding gaze on his father, and spoke as though pronouncing a sentence. "You will die for that." Two brothers, Jackson, happened to be walking nearby. They froze at the words, but seeing the quarrel unfolding, silently slipped away, leaving the family alone with the threat. Later, Charles recounted the incident to his wife, explaining that he had apologized immediately for his rash blow. But John's response was unwavering. The apology was rejected. The chilling threat remained. And yet, life in the house carried on as if nothing had happened. The two men shared the same roof, their uneasy coexistence marked by silence and subtle tension. Then came a Sunday morning in June 1879. About 2 weeks after that fateful exchange, Charles rose early, taking a spade with him. He told the family he planned to dig a small reservoir at a spring a mile into the woods so the cattle could drink. John lingered in the house for hours, moving through ordinary tasks, shaving carefully, scribbling letters, skimming the newspaper. On the surface, he appeared unchanged, but there was a weight behind his eyes, a darker edge to his usual sullen demeanor, as though the quiet threat of that morning had only grown stronger. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, John left the house. By 5, he returned. There was no particular reason anyone had been watching him, yet somehow his mother and sisters marked the hours, an observation later cited at the trial. His clothes were spotted with wetness, as though he had tried to scrub away some dark stain. His eyes were wild, his movements uneasy, and when he complained of feeling ill, he retreated to his room and collapsed onto the bed. Charles May never came back. That evening, the neighbors grew anxious. Search parties combed the woods where the spring lay hidden, their torches casting long, trembling shadows between the trees. All they found were footprints, 2 sets, tangled in the soft clay, leaving only questions, no answers. Meanwhile, John's condition deteriorated. The local doctor diagnosed him with brain fever, yet his delirium was haunted by visions of murder. He raved incoherently, naming no victim and no culprit, but the old threat he had once spoken did not escape memory. The Jackson brothers remembered. Suspicion fell swiftly upon him, and a deputy sheriff was stationed at the house to keep watch. The town's whispers soon swelled into a storm. Public opinion was ready to act, and had illness not kept him bedridden, John might have faced a mob's immediate justice. Instead, a meeting was called. The neighbors appointed a committee to monitor the unfolding events, ready to intervene if the shadows of suspicion darkened any further. By Wednesday, the story had shifted entirely. From Nolan, a tiny settlement 8 miles away, news arrived that cast the disappearance in a chilling new light. Nolan was little more than a schoolhouse, a blacksmith's shop, a modest store, and half a dozen scattered homes. The store belonged to Henry Odell, a cousin of Charles May, and it was there that the revelation began. On that Sunday afternoon, the day Charles vanished, Odell and 4 neighbors, men known for their reliability, sat idly in the store, smoking and talking as the warm breeze drifted through the open front and back doors. Around 3 o'clock, Charles May appeared. He entered at the front, passed through the small room without a word, and exited out the rear. No hat, no coat, his eyes downcast. He didn't meet their gaze, didn't respond to their greetings, though no one was surprised. Something was gravely wrong. Above his left eyebrow, a deep crimson gash carved a dark line across his face. Blood streamed down, soaking his pale gray shirt and streaking his neck. Oddly, the men's first thought wasn't panic, it was assumption. He must have been in a fight. Surely he was heading straight to the brook behind the store to wash himself. Perhaps courtesy or some unspoken backwoods code held them back from following. The court records, the main source for this account, offer no hint that anyone pursued him. They simply waited, and he never returned. Behind the store, the brook vanished into a dense forest that stretched 6 miles back toward the Medicine Lodge Hills. As news spread that Charles May had been seen in Nolan, the mood of the neighborhood shifted overnight. The vigilante committee quietly dissolved. No resolutions, no ceremony. Searches along May Creek's wooded bottoms were abandoned, and nearly every able-bodied man in the region fanned out through the thick woods of Nolan and the rolling hills beyond, combing every shadow. And yet, no trace of Charles was ever found. Perhaps the strangest twist of all was the legal farce that followed. John May was formally indicted for the murder of a man whose body no one had ever seen, a man not even known to be dead. Frontier law had its quirks, but this was exceptional. When John recovered from his fever, the charge stood. Defense counsel did not object to the unusual indictment, and the trial proceeded. The prosecution was lackluster, almost mechanical. The defense, by contrast, swiftly established an airtight alibi. During the hours when John could have committed the act, if act there was at all, Charles May had been seen miles away in Nolan. The verdict was unavoidable. If Charles had died, it had been at the hands of someone else. The forest kept its secrets, the brook whispered nothing, and the mystery of Charles May's fate remained, as haunting and unresolved as the shadowy woods that had swallowed him from sight. John May was acquitted. Without a word, he vanished from the region and was never heard from again. Not long after, his mother and sisters packed up and moved to St. Louis. The farm passed into the hands of a neighboring landowner, leaving the May house abandoned, a silent relic whispered about as if haunted, its shadow stretching over the land like a warning. Months later, curiosity stirred once more. Some local boys, playing along the banks of May Creek, stumbled upon a strange sight. Hidden beneath a thick layer of dead leaves and partly unearthed by rooting hogs, lay a spade. It gleamed nearly new, save for a dark, rust-stained smear along one edge. Carved into the handle were the initials C.M. The discovery reignited the whispers of the past. Careful digging around the spot revealed something far grimmer: the body of a man, buried under 2 to 3 feet of soil, camouflaged with leaves and twigs. The corpse showed little sign of decay, as if the mineral-rich soil had preserved it. Above the left eyebrow was a deep gash, the blood having streamed down and soaked the neck and pale gray shirt. The skull had been cleaved by the same blow. It was unmistakably Charles May. And yet the question that lingered like smoke in the air remained. What had passed through Henry Odell's store in Nolan that Sunday afternoon? No answer came, and the forest, the brook, and the abandoned house held their secrets tightly, as they always had.
And thus the story ended. If you liked this journey into the worlds of classic literature, do not forget to support us by subscribing so we can tell you more. And hey, if there's a classic tale you'd love to hear told in this suspenseful style, drop its name in the comments below. Your suggestion might be our next chilling adventure.